BB Darthras. Your story has a lot that could communicate and highlight the things you faced and move people to find solutions. Kitty Cat.
How did I get here?
Helia.
Where is here? Let's begin there. Where is there? Well, let me elaborate. I am a veteran. I spent a year in Afghanistan for Operation Enduring Freedom in 2004 and 2005. It completely changed who I am and how I look at life. I should have wrote these down when they were much fresher in my head, but this might be the first time I ever really looked back at that year. I don't hate my experience. I'm glad for all the things I have retained that are beneficial. I don't know what my purpose here is or what I'm trying to do with this. I do question, why does every military story have to be about a hero or a traitor or someone that isn't just an everyman that experiences things no people should have to experience? I'm not a hardcore sniper or an ace fighter pilot. I was a member of the Army National Guard that got deployed, and this is my story, or at least the parts I can recall enough to write down. Everything starts somewhere. For me, it was somewhere in the South, some morning many decades ago. This is only important as without that moment, I would cease to exist in this moment, and everything I know would be irrelevant if it existed at all. So, to start somewhere, here's a little bit about me. Like most of the kids in my generation, I grew up in the transition of the 80s to 90s, where we had records, 8-tracks, cassettes, VHS, CDs, and any DVDs in the same house. We also knew how to program the VCR in most cases. Remember the top-loading VCRs? My favorite 8-track was Linda Ronstadt. It's so easy. Favorite sing-along song was The Devil Went Down to Georgia. I still karaoke this at the Cat's Meow in New Orleans when I'm in town. I was hanging out with 14-year-olds at 4 years old and stashing Playboys in my underwear drawer while my mother was doing my laundry. Yeah, that ended well. Better than the time we broke into an unlocked apartment and she swore the cops were coming to get me. My mother had packed me a suitcase and told me I was going to jail. Several hours later, I saw a police squad car show up. When the police knocked on the door, I started bawling. It took me a minute through the tears to realize my pawpaw, who happened to be an actual police officer, was the one standing there. It was also one of the reasons I joined the military. In the first place, to make him proud. Needless to say, he was disappointed that I never made it a career. He gave me a hell of a gift, though. I will always have the moments we shared. All of them. I love you, Papa. I went to my sister's funeral when I was 6 and in kindergarten for the second time. Yeah, they held me back for coloring outside the lines and puking on the teacher's desk. I chose to be there at the funeral, not kindergarten, for a second time. I recall the day I saw my sister blue-faced in the crib with my parents crying on her on December 4th, the day she died, the day before my birthday. We had that little wooden paneling that everyone had in the 80s, you know, the brown with the black in between. I also remember a trip to Kmart when we tipped over the cart with her in it. Someone got an ass whooping that day. In hindsight, little boys are absolute hellions, and some are taken much too young. Boys and girls. I was and am a nerd. I was and still am tall, except for my back goes out and I'm forced to crawl. I had a southern accent when I moved to Michigan that got me nicknamed Gopher when combined with the gap in my front teeth. For those that missed the reference, I had a whistle in my front teeth. I also hated the name Sylvester. Everyone called me a variation of SJ. Bullies called me Ashtray or Ass J. My gym teacher called me Slyvester. Looking back, Slyvester was kind of cool, but I really disliked it as a kid. I have a friend that calls me Vesty. Kind of like that one too, but I never told him so. I hated Sylvester more. I hated being asked about Tweety. I never chose to use my name until college, after I was over 25, been married, had a kid, went to war, got divorced, and lost everything. What else is there? Why does the name matter? Should I do it all over again with a different person? Why? What's the fucking point? I ran with that for a long time. I still ask myself daily, what's the point? My answer never changes. I don't have one. I'm rambling again. My first play was in the fourth grade. I was the second act Willy Wonka in our Charlie and the Chocolate Factory production. We had 3 Willies. I knew everyone's lines, many of them didn't. We were 4th graders, and I had a strong feeling I would end up in LA one day. There is video of this play. Thank you, Grandma. And P.S. I very much fed people their lines during that production and the actual performance. I missed most of the hip-hop and rap revolution because I may or may not have been downloading Billy Joel's discography on net. I definitely bought them from Columbia House, I actually did buy his greatest hits, 1, 2, and 3. I did steal Stormfront from my dad. And also because I lived in BFE. Right, Bumfuck Egypt, for those of you that don't know the acronym. Fun fact, it sometimes took weeks to download songs and weeks to get mail order CDs in the 90s. My first memorable spin-out in life was my senior year in my best friend's Dodge Aries. And was the first outing of my new Walkman CD player. It wasn't a real Sony Walkman. We were poorish middle class of the 90s. As we came off the freeway at 70 miles an hour, a tire blew out. We flew past the pavement and spun until a reflector pole smashed inches behind my head on the door jamb, smashing the rear window. After that car stopped and we sat there stunned for a few seconds, the first words out of my mouth were, "It didn't skip." While checking to make sure the CD player was actually okay, if it didn't skip, it was fine, obviously. We didn't get out of the car. We simply looked at each other and got back on the road, and he drove to the parking lot to the school. We were both shocked upon exiting the vehicle that, well, the tire was flat. I think we were both still in shock from the spin out, to be honest. We should have noticed this. Side note, this is the same car that I may or may not have shot the rear window out with a BB gun. My second spin out was when I learned how to pit maneuver a vehicle at 30 miles per hour before going to Afghanistan. I could keep telling stories unrelated to the subject of this project, but then I'd never finish it. Hi y'all, I'm Kazlo. Welcome to the night shift where I bridge that gap between yesterday and tomorrow. I am a veteran, and what you just heard was the forward introduction to my story and my experience in Afghanistan. And my life, as I can recall it today. Is it finished? No. Does it cover most of the things I recall that left an impact on me in Afghanistan? Yeah, it does. Can you find it anywhere? No. It's not done. But I'm confident enough reading you the foreword of this. So when you say that I should do things, and you tell me how to get through the things that I've dealt with, this is my memoirs of my experience. This is my television pilot first episode. This is my stage show called Shifting the Broken that talks about my time being homeless that's directly related to Afghanistan. So when you tell me to write down my story, I have. I've written my story down 3 different times, 3 different ways, in 3 different mediums. I've written it. It's there. I've told it. I tell it every fucking night I'm on here. Believe me, I am dealing with some shit that y'all have no fucking idea. I was homeless for 3 years. I spent the last literally 20 years right at this moment dealing with PTSD, depression, and every fucking thing else that comes with coming home from Afghanistan, from being in a combat zone and losing your entire life. I lost my kid, I lost my wife, I lost my life that day. And I have done nothing but try to rebuild everything I've lost in a way that cannot be taken from me. So when I talk about things, when I share perspectives, when I share feelings, they're fucking real. I have lived a life that most people can't even imagine. Now, that said, my life is nowhere near as traumatic or hard as other people's lives. This is my story. But you know what's hard? You know what's really fucking hard? Is sharing it with people. Letting people know how I feel about myself, my life, and the things I've experienced. And there is so much judgmental bullshit going on in the world right now that I am afraid to put this stuff out there in writing where people can actually analyze it, look at it, and read it. Because there is an animosity, there is a hatred that exists in this world for people telling their stories about diversity and hardship and how they've tried to recover, overcome, and or deal with that. There's also an audience for people who want these stories. They want to read these stories. They want the inspiration and
BB Darthras. But it's what people need to hear.
And believe me, my hardest thing right now isn't my mental health. It's trying to figure out how I take everything I've learned, everything I know, and everything I've experienced, and packaging it up into a nice little bow so I can fucking stamp a price tag on it and ship it out for capitalism so they can pay my fucking bills. It's easy to say you should write something. It's easy to say you should just do it. And I've done it. It was easy. Writing this was some of the easiest hard shit I've ever fucking done in my life. And this isn't huge. This isn't a lot. It's 21 chapters right now, and if you actually look at it, it's not huge. It's not huge. But it's 25,000 words, which isn't a lot, right? 545 paragraphs, 100 or 1,773 sentences. It's relatively short. Should take you about an hour and 40 minutes to read. 72 pages in paperback, 144 pages printed. I don't know if it's long enough. I don't know anything about writing a book. I don't know anything about publishing a book. I don't know anything about telling my story to the world in writing. The only thing I know is what they taught me in college. And God knows that I don't probably remember most of that. But I've written my stories. This is a story that's supposed to be read. Although, most likely, I'm going to read it in an audiobook, so it'll be available in an audiobook as well. Because I think the best way to tell the story is through my voice, not somebody else's. Because it's my story. And if I'm telling the story, you're probably going to get more out of it if I tell the story than if somebody else does. Because when something triggers something, I'm probably going to lean into it. But I've written my story down. I've written the stories that I want to tell in science fiction.
Don't let anyone change it.
The only person who changes my story is me. Because this is my story. This is about my story. You want to... Here's a list of the chapters, y'all. Pick a chapter and we'll read a chapter. Fuck it. Y'all want to pick, like, on the side there, all the chapters. See what chapter is most appealing and I'll read that chapter. I'll share it with you. Foreword is just the foreword, and it's a little bit more about me. Most of you guys already know this, but those of you that don't, this is...
BB Darthras. I can't make the words out, though.
I zoom in, hang on. Here you go. Should be able to read them. I don't know. I don't know if I can zoom in. Hang on, let me see.
BB Darthras. Try 7.
7? Fatboy. Oh, lovely. I hate you. Okay. We talk about this quite often on this channel. We've talked about my particular struggles with weight, and this is
just a shot in the dark.
This is that story. This is that rant, or whatever you want to call it. I have an elastic relationship with weight. When I was younger, I was incredibly thick. I had incredibly thick thighs. My brothers and I rode bikes every day for miles and miles around the lake. At one point, I was able to leg press, I want to say close to 900 pounds on the sled while prepping for football my junior year in high school. I was 6'2", early on, 4th or 5th grade. My weight then was pretty consistent, around 165, 185. My coaches hounded me to gain weight for football. 185 pounds was as much as I could put on, regardless of what I ate while playing sports. After I stopped playing sports, breaking 185 was easy. Still is. When I took on football and athletics rather than theater, I began gaining muscle mass. It was cool to get buff. However, it wasn't long before I was 210 pounds. The football season had wound down and I stopped lifting weights, but kept eating all those calories. The military requires a certain weight to join. Well, I passed, but only after fasting and going on the Atkins diet for months in advance. You know, the low-carb, high-protein, fatty foods diet that is absolutely terrible for your heart. Yeah, that was my ticket into the military. When I completed basic training, I was about 207 pounds lean, which lasted all of about a month after I started eating Taco Bell and drinking beer again. So, I mentioned that I had issues at Atterbury regarding my weight. I should probably get back to that story. I may have been as much as 225 pounds, and I was not Captain America. So there was a little bit of a spare tire, fine, a lot of a spare tire. I scored fairly high on all the PT tests and passed, but I sure failed weight of 185 for 6'2". Now, I assumed I would pass tape, I swear I did, but I must have failed. Paperwork doesn't lie. Can't really recall the exact details, and I'm sure if I had my records, I could review them and know the exact answer. But this failed PT test was just before we deployed. Now, failing tape is not the end of the world if you can correct the issue, but it absolutely can ruin a career. Those of us that failed were put on a PT program, remedial PT program, as was appropriate for the failure to make weight in the Army. However, the Army physical fitness test is not usually given in a combat zone. I want to point out that in many instances, there was incredibly toxic behavior and treatment regarding fat boys in the military, and have more than likely blocked or forgotten that treatment for my own mental well-being for the most part. You can Google the subject and see for yourself, or watch Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket for further clarification. Moving on, Kabul, Afghanistan has an elevation of 5,876 feet, which puts it up higher with less oxygen than Denver, Colorado, being the highest point in the United States. Being that we were all from the plains of Indiana, this was going to prove a huge acclimation goal. A 2-mile run at 6,000 feet above sea level is a challenge, let me tell you. My company commander insisted that we pass this program. He was hardcore, and I really can't say more. I've said more on stream, but we'll leave it at that. Now, keep in mind that I never had an issue with the PT aspect, just the weight. Running, sit-ups, push-ups, physical fitness, not a problem. Maintaining a weight, a little more. So one does not simply step on a scale and get checked off. I said, hey, I can pass weight now. Do I have to actually do remedial PT? No, I had to train under a program until we got to take the Army physical fitness test at 6,000 feet in a combat zone. And even some of the guys that passed in Indiana wouldn't have passed it here. Guaranteed. So I was in pretty good shape, and I passed it in Afghanistan. And it did not count, officially. Yep, that's right. We took the PT test in a combat zone, and it didn't count. Why? Because you generally don't take a PT test in a combat zone, as if we need the extra stress. You also don't generally sniper check officers, but they insisted we salute them with RPGs fizzling overhead. People's pride and desire for respect is really fucked at times. Really, truly. I'm sure the officers that were shot due to sniper checks regretted it for the split second. We didn't have any sniper casualties at Camp Phoenix during my deployment, thankfully. Obviously, there weren't a lot of hills around, so it's more about principle. But, you know the Gorham kicker? I wanted to go active duty National Guard as a unit administrator. I applied for the full-time job at an armory. I was so excited. I really did have a desire to serve in the military, but I failed my last official AFPT, or APFT. The response to my application was denied due to failed PT test that I had since retaken, but it didn't count. So was it in vain? How might things have played out if I wasn't a military fat boy? Maybe I would have retired at 20 years. I will save you the suspense. Keep reading. I was able to secure a conditional release from the National Guard to enlist in the Coast Guard and shipped to Cape May in January or February, I think it was February, of 2006. Downside is I was a few months shy of 2 years, and the Coast Guard refused to waiver me for the pit stop course for prior service, which basically streamlines me through the Coast Guard specific knowledge, drill and ceremony, coasting skills, etc., right? And avoids all the basic training bullshit that they put people who haven't served through. So I had to go back through basic training and do it all over again. The initial 8 weeks of hell after being a veteran in the Coast Guard. Or in
the
Coast
Guard boot is the hardest, they say.
It's not. It's not that hard.
BB Darthras. Guard?
Well, long story short, my brain decided to play its hand, and I was discharged within 2 weeks with depression and suicidal ideation. To get a little more into that, I don't really talk about it in here, but I probably need to. Making sure I didn't write a chapter about this. I may not have, so I may have to add this. I had planned to take my life in basic training. I was ready to do it, and I told them and said I needed to see somebody because I was cognitive enough and not far gone enough that I was going to do it regardless, but I reached out for the help. I told them that I was planning to do it. I wanted to do it, and that was when they moved me. So, anywho... Right. But anyways, back to the story. Long story short, my brain decided to play its hand, discharged within 2 weeks of depression and suicidal ideation. The mistake I probably made, most definitely made, was to leave without letting them fix me. But I've never put much faith in the military's priorities since Agent Orange happened, and until recently, right, they kind of ignored it was a thing. And I watched them recycle and illegally recruit 17-year-old soldiers for weeks and gave no fucks until they realized he was 17 and didn't have guardian signatures, and the guy with the mental health issues was constantly wearing a pink vest until he decided that he was okay to stay because he was not going to get out any other way because the military won't let you out. And my depression, turns out I have PTSD from Afghanistan, and it wasn't just depression. So I was discharged from the Coast Guard with depression in 2006, and I wasn't officially diagnosed with PTSD, I believe, until 2016. So it took me 10 years to get the initial PTSD mental health assessment. Now, I'm thoroughly off topic for the record, and to finish this chapter, after returning from Afghanistan, I eventually hit 275 pounds, with borderline hypertension and diabetes. Today, I am comfortably around 200, 210 pounds, and my last chemical makeup came back okay. And this is still accurate, as I recently had my yearly annual again, and I think I wrote this after last year's. But I'm still good. My sodium levels have gone down, etc., right? So as a side note, I would like to state that I no longer own a scale. I haven't owned a scale in over a decade. So outside of doctor's visits, I can't tell you my exact weight, and I'm okay with that. Now, I want to make a note that a fat boy may or may not be fat at all. They also may not be a boy. It is a term simply used for someone that failed the PT test. I won't pretend it isn't used to be hurtful to people with weight issues. It is. Some people may find it motivating, but most don't. The military is intense like that, though I won't defend the toxic shit. Also, I understand I don't blame the Army for my shortcomings, but I will rant about the APFT and tapings. And that is the chapter Fat Boy. So, I'm not mad at anybody. I think y'all need to understand where I'm coming from.
BB Darthras. My nickname in boot was Boondocks.
I'm not coming from a place of superiority to be superior. I'm not coming from a place of privilege because I'm raised by rich bitches and was any of that. I come from a place of like middle class, low middle class, depending on what part of history you're looking at. And I left the house at 18, moved in with my dad. I immediately went to college, and I've lived with my parents off and on over the years, specifically my dad, because living with my dad is more like living with a friend or a brother than it is like a father. Kind of a weird thing, but he was there if I needed him, and we could talk and smoke weed and shit on occasion, or not. Um, but I haven't had that path of least resistance that some people claim to have and that people claim exists. And I know it exists. I've seen people that haven't done half the stuff I've done, and they're much more successful than I am. I think I probably got tripped up at somewhere. I wanted to be a cop at one point. And when I went and took my first semester of criminal justice and criminology, by the way, I was a criminal justice major at one point in college. And I took a semester of criminal justice and criminology, criminal justice 101 and criminology 101, or 102, I forget, which basically talks about the intro to the criminal justice system. So when I talk about the criminal justice system, I'm not talking as someone with a complete lack of understanding, because I actually at one point went to be a police officer and I went to school to get the degree. But because of the shit that I learned in college, I immediately decided at the end of that semester that I was not cut out to be a police officer in the real world. If anything, I'd rather play one on TV, because it comes with a lot less of actually having to murder people. Hurt people. Defend yourself against people. All of the above. Yeah, I'm not. They informed me that the KKK have ID cards, plastic ID cards, and have had for a while. They maybe not anymore, but they did, and they informed me of this when I was actually going through this program. And I was just like, holy shit, and we allow these people to still operate in this country. Yeah. So that's why I'm not in legal stuff, is because I went to be a law enforcement officer. That was my plan. That was always my plan. Long before I was ever... The original plan was to be a baseball player, a fighter pilot, and then when my eyes went out, I knew fighter pilot was off the table, and then eventually theater, acting. And then after acting, I decided that I wasn't going to be able to be an actor because I didn't have what it took or whatever. Wanted to have a family.
WTF, why would they have ID cards?
That's a good question. And then I decided after criminal justice to be computer information systems.
They are that stupid.
And then at the end of it, I went back to school for theater and got my degree in theater.
BB Darthras 007 LMAO.
So I started out as a theater, wanting to be a theater major. Then I changed to criminal justice, criminology. Then I switched to computer information systems. And then at the end of it all, I actually went to computer programming and then back to theater. So full circle from entertainment, theater, acting, back to entertainment, theater, acting, after I went through the whole gamut of things that I wanted to do. Technology, law enforcement, and then back to entertainment. So for those of you that don't know my story, that's my story. This is my experience in Afghanistan that does actually talk about a lot of my experiences as a child and how they've affected me and turned me into who I am. So I wasn't mad, Chris, but you asked for something and I felt that I have the ability to deliver, so I did. Because I have written my story down. I have told my story. I tell my story every day. But I've written my story down for people to read. The problem is, I need people to read this. I need to proof it. I need to maybe clean it up. But I also need to know...
I think it would help a lot of people.
...what the next step is. It will be available at some point, Chris. I just don't... I'm stuck at the moment. And I'm dealing with that.
BB Darthras. You also...
And so... Yeah, I'm stuck right now. I'm dealing with my health stuff, and I'm trying to get back to a place where I'm comfortable enough with my own products, my own stories being out there.
By the way, I noticed Google not capitalized.
Yeah, and it was intentional. In my writing, when I do something, if it's not like a typo, there's a specific reason why I do it, generally speaking. I'll tell you if something's a typo, but if something in my writing is done a certain way, it's specifically done a certain way, for the most part. Specifically done a certain way. Because I do have a stylistic understanding of the way I like to write things. And little things like that you'll see. I'm very particular about my words and my writing. and I try to use the appropriate words. That's why I take some time occasionally to actually think through what I'm going to say. And I might use words that are unusual, and that's because I pick and choose my words carefully, usually, most of the time. But this is a big why I joined. My papa, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my brothers, my sister, college, 9/11.
Here is my 2-cent worth open, with what you read at first being narrated touching song in the background, and the camera pans out to show the van you was living in.
It doesn't need that, because it's not about that. That's not this story. That's not this story. This story is more about Afghanistan. More about Afghanistan. It's not about the homelessness. The homeless story